Hey everybody, how's it going? We just got back from the Smoky Mountain Bigfoot conference the day before yesterday, and I walked into an absolute hornet's nest at work. So I'm going to just do one story. This is going to be 20 or 30 minutes long. It's a really good story about a woman who is actually visited by people from the alien greys, the people from outer space. So and in this video, I'm going to run some 360 video that I got at the conference just to have so you guys can kind of see what that thing looks like. But I had a great time, and I'm going to talk about that more and all the people I met, and so many people inspired me and encouraged me and were so nice to me. It just blows me away how good people are to me, and if I talk about it much, I'm going to choke up. But I met all kind of people from all over the country, and it was a great time, and I'm going to talk about that maybe in a live feed. I've been wanting to do a live feed outside with my laptop, and hopefully I can do that in the next couple of weeks and just tell you all about it, and maybe get some of the people that were there to come on and give you maybe an idea of what the conference is like. But right now, let's get into the story, and then I have to get back to work, and I may not have another podcast up until this weekend or next Monday. I didn't think I would get one in this week, but I thought I would just stop and do this short story because it really grabbed me. I was up early this morning reading this, and I thought, wow, I think people would really enjoy it. It's horrifying for the woman it happened to, but I think you all will find this fascinating. And I emailed her and told her the same thing. I said, this is a great story. I know it's horrifying for you, but so let's get into that, and I hope you enjoy the video that's coming up with the convention conference we were at in the Smoky Mountains. But this story is submitted by MJ, and she lives in California. I think she still does. But let's just read the story. I think you're going to find this crazy. In the summer of 1994, my husband and I bought a brand new home in one of the many housing subdivisions being built in the Sacramento Valley during the 1990s housing boom. The area had originally been mostly farmland and floodplains, and there were dozens of subdivisions being built, and each subdivision displayed beautifully decorated home plans. The homes were much more affordable then, so we applied for a first-time buyer loan and crossed our fingers. The loan process seemed to take forever, but when we were approved, we got to pick out our very own flooring style and upgraded the kitchen appliances, which was so nice since the apartment we lived in had no dishwasher or self-cleaning oven. We moved our family, which consisted of the two of us, our 4-year-old son, and our future baby girl, who was due in mid-August, and we were happy to have accomplished so much in a relatively short amount of time. The house was on a dead-end street since the owner of the property behind the subdivision did not want to sell any of his property, which would have allowed for the street to go through and join up with other subdivisions. There was still a lot of open land and homes in various stages of construction, and our neighbors had kids about the same age as our son, and he made new friends, and all the kids played on the street since there was no traffic during the day while most people were at work. Unfortunately, my husband was not able to find a job in Sacramento right away, so he would stay with his mom back in the Bay Area during the work week, and then he would drive back to the valley to check in on us so we could do our grocery shopping and other errands. At that time, we only had one car, and I was left stranded until he was back from the Bay Area. It was a long commute, but my husband was so happy to buy us the house that he was willing to commute with the hope that he would find a job in the valley soon enough and stop commuting. It was a whole year before he was hired at one of the local auto body shops. When our daughter was born, my husband was able to take a week off from work to be with us and enjoy our new baby girl, and then he went back to work and to his commute. He would get up at 3 a.m. and make his coffee and get his overnight bag and leave at 3:30 a.m. so he could be at work by 6:30 a.m. Back then, he was the breadwinner, so we really needed him to keep that job, even if it was 100 miles away. I would normally get up with him and spend a few minutes with him before he would be off. I would go back to bed and try to sleep before the baby would wake up to nurse around 5:30 a.m. I would feed her in bed and then lay her between me and our 4-year-old son, and the three of us would snuggle and sleep until around 8:30 before we started our day. We were so spoiled. On this Monday, after he left for his commute, I felt uneasy and I felt scared, but I didn't know why. I decided to go back to our bedroom and lay down thinking that the baby would be up soon enough to nurse, so maybe it would be better just to lay back down. I fell asleep and I had a horrible nightmare. I dreamt that our son was missing and that we were running to different streets looking for him and calling his name. I woke up suddenly and I was relieved that it was just a horrible dream and my boy was fast asleep next to me and the baby was still in her bassinet next to the bed. I turned over on my side facing the bassinet, and I saw a bright light coming in between the window blinds, and thinking out loud, I said, "Is it morning already?" The light was coming in between the blinds, and it was so bright, but the rest of the room looked dark. There was a bright light on the wall next to the window, and I looked up to see where the light was coming from, and to my horror, just above the bassinet was an alien gray's face. It was just the head, no upper body, legs or arms. The head was dark in color, very round, ending in a pointed chin, and there were small slits for his mouth and nostrils, but the eyes were large and almond-shaped and very shiny black, and it had some sort of glass lamp on the top of its head. The light on the wall was coming from this lamp. The being was looking down at the baby in the bassinet. Oh my God, I couldn't speak. My heart started pounding so hard that I started trembling uncontrollably. It saw me and it scowled at me when it realized I was looking at it, and it moved toward me and I started screaming and swinging my arms and kicking, and I remembered that I said out loud, "Oh my God, I'm going to lose my mind." I felt that I could not take the fact that this creature was there, and it was just there in the room, above my baby's bassinet in the house. It floated from its original position above the bassinet to just above my face, and I remember seeing this light blue fog build up in front of my face, and then in a dreamlike manner I remember a sound like pigeons make, like a cooing sound. I remember feeling that whoever was talking to me was stern and was telling me that it was for our own good, and then I woke up again. When I woke up again, it was still dark out, but it was around 6 a.m., and the blankets were perfectly made around the bed, like nothing had happened, and everything felt still. My son was asleep next to me, and the baby was in her bassinet, and I got out of bed and turned all the lights on in the room and the rest of the house, and I checked all the rooms in the house, and I checked the locks on the front door and the lock in the backyard sliding glass door, and everything was just like I had left it after my husband had left for work. I decided to stay up and just start my day. In fact, I got in the shower, even though that was not my usual time to shower. When I was washing my hair, there was a sore spot on the top of my head. There was no blood, no bump, just it was very sore. I got dressed and I went to the kitchen and I had some coffee. While having my coffee, I was trying to make sense of all those events. And I remember the nightmare that I had woken up from and how relieved I had felt that it had just been a bad dream. But then that thing was there. And I couldn't decide if it had been another bad dream or if that second part was real. It didn't make sense, but how can a bad dream as scary as that could be was still making me afraid? My son was up at 9 a.m., and I kept checking in on the baby, and she kept sleeping. She should have been up once to nurse, but no, she wasn't. And I called my sister and I told her about my weird dream, and I started crying because it seemed like it had been real, but I kept thinking that it couldn't be real. I checked on the baby, and she had no fever, no rash, but she did not wake up to nurse until 2 p.m. that afternoon, and by then I was sore and engorged with milk. As the day progressed, I became anxious, and before it was evening, I called my sister asking if she could come over and pick us up. I didn't want to be there alone with the kids when it was night again. She came over and took us to her apartment. My sister wasn't sure what to make of this whole thing. I was just grateful that I didn't have to be alone in the house. We stayed in her kids' room that night, and I remember feeling very scared because I didn't know if it would happen again, but I put both kids and me under the twin bed we were supposed to sleep on, but we slept under the bed. Wow. I called my husband and told him about my bad dream, but he thought it was just stress from being left alone so many nights and taking care of the kids in the house. My husband picked us up from my sister's place and drove us back to our house. That evening, I tried to go about my normal routine, making dinner, bathing the kids before bed, and watching a movie. And then it was time for me and my husband to go to bed, so I put both kids in the bed between us, and I put a large toy sword next to me in the bed. I was terrified that it would come back, that I would wake up and that face would be there looking back at me when I opened my eyes. I knew there was nothing I could do to protect us, and that made me more frightened than anything. My husband continued to commute for another 6 months, so I was still alone in the evening. That was the worst part. For weeks, every night, I would stay up just until I could see daylight before I felt safe to fall asleep. I would leave the TV on and the bedroom lights on and fight sleep until I would see the early sunlight peek through the windows. I didn't feel safe until around early spring when the morning light starts just a bit earlier each morning. I went on like this for 3 years every winter. And for years I was terrified to look out any window in the evenings. I would close all the blinds in the house at night and leave some lights on before going to bed. My husband would just tell me that it had been a bad dream, and after a few months, he didn't like me to talk about it. My daughter was only 3 months old when this happened. She doesn't have any strange scars or ill effects from the experience. I no longer fear the winter nights, but I know that it was not a dream. Regarding the description of the creature I saw, in the book titled Operation Trojan Horse, there is a description of an ET that has been described wearing some type of light attached to or on the top of his head. And then that's the end of her email, and she references Operation Trojan Horse, Anomalous books written by J.A. Keel, 2013. MJ, I'm reluctant to say, heck, that was just a dream, because you are so adamant about it not being a dream and it being real. That is a terrifying story, especially for a mother, a young mother. I remember when we were, my wife and I got married when I think I was 19, she was 18. And you know, those first 10 years when I was off working and we started having kids within a year, and by the time I was 22 or 23, I had 3 children. She was always home with the kids, and I constantly worried about them being alone at the house. But you know, you got to go to work, and she would have different things happen and call me, and people would come to the door. That's back when door-to-door salesmen would come by. Of course, would she just not answer the door? No, she'd let them in the house. And oh my gosh, I got so frustrated with her doing that because she thought it was rude if she didn't let them in the house. And I said, don't let any human in the house when I'm not there. Just don't do it. Doesn't matter if it hurts your feelings, it keeps you safe. But that's a whole nother thing. And we still talk about that today, by the way. But the point is I remember all of those fears that young couples have. And you're going through a huge life change. You're single and in high school or in college, maybe you're a little older and working, and all of a sudden you're in this family. You've got a new family. You're living with someone that you've never lived with before, and it takes years for all that to kind of settle in a groove, and you guys get your routines going and things to feel normal. And then you add on top of that this experience that MJ had. It's got to be life altering. And so it was a great story, and I really, really appreciate MJ sending this. And like I said at the beginning of the podcast, maybe you've been watching some of this footage I got from the I want to keep calling it a convention, but it's a conference, and I don't go to these. I've only been to 2. I've been to this thing twice, and so I'm not really used to them, or what you call them, or what you're supposed to even do or act like. But I just kind of stand out to the side, and I get to meet so many people that are familiar with the podcast, and that's what I really enjoy. And it gets tiring, and I can't remember everybody's name. There were people I met last year, and they showed up, and there's so many people that it's hard to keep up with all that. But I remembered several faces, and I would tell people, I remember you from last year. But it was just a great time, and I'm just rambling. I'll go ahead and end this podcast. So thank you all for watching, and I'll be back as soon as I can. Maybe in the next couple of days, I'll find a little stopping point where I can do another short story like this. But nobody cares. I can't shut my mouth. I don't know what's wrong with me. You guys have a good rest of your week, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks.